There is a place on the coast of Washington where the ocean does not simply rise and fall with the tide, it advances. Year after year, storm after storm, the shoreline moves inland, swallowing land that people once believed was permanent. Roads that once led to homes now end abruptly in open air. Foundations that once held houses now sit exposed on the beach, waiting for the sea to finish the job. In one small community, the Pacific Ocean has been claiming an average of 100 feet, more than 30 meters, of land every single year. Imagine standing on property you own, only to know that by next winter the edge of your yard may be gone. Imagine watching an entire town retreat, not because of war, not because of fire, but because the land itself is disappearing beneath relentless waves. How does an American town begin to vanish into the ocean? Why is this happening so fast in one place while nearby coastlines remain intact? And what hidden geological forces have turned North Cove, better known as Washaway Beach, into one of the fastest eroding shorelines in the United States? Along the southwest coast of Washington state, where the Pacific Ocean meets the mouth of Willapa Bay, North Cove occupies one of the most unstable coastal environments in North America. At first glance, the area appears calm: low dunes, broad beaches, marshlands, and open water stretching toward the horizon. But beneath that seemingly gentle landscape lies a highly dynamic battle between land, sea, and sediment. The shoreline here is not fixed. It is part of a constantly shifting coastal system where waves, currents, tides, and storms reshape the land in dramatic ways. For over a century, those forces have been relentlessly cutting into North Cove, tearing away bluff after bluff, dune after dune. To understand why Washaway Beach is disappearing, it is necessary to look beyond the waves crashing on shore and into the deeper geological machinery that controls the Pacific Northwest coast. North Cove sits on a sand-rich barrier shoreline formed over thousands of years by sediment moving northward from the Columbia River. The beaches of southwest Washington were built from enormous quantities of sand delivered by the river system, then redistributed by waves and longshore currents. For centuries, that supply of sediment helped maintain wide beaches and coastal dunes that protected inland areas from erosion. But coastlines depend on balance. Sand must arrive at roughly the same rate that waves and tides remove it. If that balance is disrupted, erosion accelerates. And at North Cove, that balance was severely broken. The shoreline at Washaway Beach lies just north of the entrance to Willapa Bay, an estuary connected to the Pacific Ocean through a tidal inlet. This opening acts like a powerful hydraulic gateway. Every tidal cycle, massive volumes of water surge in and out of the bay. Those currents interact with incoming ocean waves, focusing energy onto the shoreline near North Cove. Instead of waves distributing their force evenly along the coast, they converge in this area, concentrating erosion on one narrow section of beach. The result is a powerful erosional hotspot. The incoming surf strips away sand faster than the coast can replenish it. Once the protective beach narrows, the waves begin attacking dunes and bluffs directly. During winter storms, when wave energy intensifies, large sections of shoreline can vanish in a matter of days. In places where dunes once buffered the land, the ocean now cuts steep scarps into the shoreline, undermining everything behind them. Yet tidal forces alone do not explain why North Cove loses land so dramatically, while nearby areas remain more stable. Another major factor lies in the engineering of the coast itself. Human-made jetties, particularly those constructed near the mouth of Gray's Harbour to the north, altered the natural movement of sediment along the Washington coast. Jetties are designed to stabilize navigation channels by trapping sand and preventing inlets from shifting. But when sand is trapped in one location, it is often starved in another. In the case of North Cove, sediment that would naturally nourish the shoreline was interrupted by these structures. Beaches to the north accumulated sand, while Washaway Beach received less replenishment. That sediment deficit left the shoreline increasingly vulnerable. Each winter storm removed more material than the system could replace, deepening the erosional crisis year after year. The problem was intensified further by changes in the Columbia River basin. Dams built along the river reduced the amount of sediment reaching the coast. Rivers are the primary suppliers of sand to many shorelines, carrying sediment eroded from inland mountains and depositing it at the ocean's edge. When dams trap that sediment upstream, the coastline receives less material to rebuild beaches. Over decades, that reduction has weakened the resilience of Washington's southern coast, especially in areas already prone to erosion. North Cove became the perfect convergence point for these destructive processes: strong wave energy, concentrated tidal currents, sediment starvation, and unstable shoreline geomorphology. The ocean did not merely begin eroding the beach, it began reorganizing the entire landscape. The geological setting of Washaway Beach made this even worse. Unlike rocky coastlines, where resistant bedrock cliffs can withstand wave attack for long periods, North Cove sits on unconsolidated sediments, loose sands, silts, and coastal deposits that are easily eroded. These materials were laid down during the late Holocene, forming low-lying beaches and dunes that can migrate rapidly under energetic wave conditions. Unconsolidated coastal sediments behave differently from rock. Bedrock erodes slowly, often over centuries, but loose sand can be moved in a single storm. When waves attack these sediments, they can excavate the shoreline quickly, carving away entire embankments. Once erosion begins, the system often destabilizes further. The removal of one dune exposes the next. The loss of one bluff weakens adjacent land. Each retreat leaves the shoreline more vulnerable than before. This is why Washaway Beach has shown such astonishing retreat rates. In some years, the shoreline moved inland by more than 100 feet, or over 30 meters. Over decades, that cumulative loss transformed the landscape beyond recognition. Historic maps show land that no longer exists. Roads, homes, and community structures that once stood safely inland are now gone. Some were dismantled before the sea reached them. Others simply collapsed into the surf. The speed of change is what makes North Cove so extraordinary. Coastal erosion is common worldwide, but it often occurs gradually. At Washaway Beach, the retreat has been fast enough for residents to witness the coastline redraw itself within a single lifetime. This is not ancient geological change measured in millennia. It is active land loss measured in seasons. Winter storms are the main drivers of these dramatic erosion events. During the storm season, the Pacific Ocean generates powerful swell waves that travel thousands of miles before striking the Washington coast. These waves carry enormous energy, especially during low-pressure systems that raise water levels through storm surge. When high tides coincide with large waves, water reaches farther inland, allowing wave attack on dunes and bluffs that would normally remain protected. At North Cove, the geometry of the shoreline amplifies that impact. The orientation of the coast causes wave energy to refract toward the bay entrance, focusing erosive force directly onto Washaway Beach. Instead of dissipating, the energy intensifies where the shoreline curves. This process, known as wave convergence, accelerates shoreline retreat by increasing the erosive capacity of every storm. The bathymetry offshore also plays a critical role. Beneath the ocean surface lies an underwater channel near the entrance to Willapa Bay. This deeper zone alters how waves approach the coast. As waves move from deeper to shallower water, they slow and grow steeper. But channels allow waves to retain energy longer before breaking, concentrating their force where they finally collapse near shore. This makes the North Cove shoreline especially vulnerable to deep, energetic wave attack. The sea is effectively armed with geological leverage. The underwater shape of the seabed directs wave power toward one of the weakest stretches of coast in the region. Over time, this has produced a cascading erosion cycle. As the shoreline retreats, the nearshore profile steepens. Steeper shore faces allow waves to reach the coast with greater energy. Higher energy impacts remove more sediment. That removal steepens the profile further, reinforcing the cycle. Without intervention, such systems can continue eroding rapidly for decades. Washaway Beach demonstrates how erosion is rarely caused by a single factor. It is the result of multiple interconnected geological processes operating simultaneously. Wave climate, tidal hydraulics, sediment supply, coastal engineering, shoreline orientation, and sediment composition all combine to determine how a coast behaves. At North Cove, each factor pushes toward instability. The town's vulnerability also reflects its low elevation. Much of the land lies only a few feet above sea level, making it easy for storm waves to overtop dunes and attack inland areas. Low-relief landscapes have little natural resistance. Once the protective beach is compromised, there are no cliffs or elevated terraces to slow the sea's advance. Water can simply move landward, eroding as it goes. This creates an erosional domino effect. The loss of the beach exposes the dunes. The loss of dunes exposes the lowland. The lowland floods and erodes, allowing waves to reach farther inland. Each stage accelerates the next. By the middle of the 20th century, the consequences were impossible to ignore. Structures vanished. Shorelines receded alarmingly fast. Entire portions of the community had to retreat inland. The nickname Washaway Beach emerged not as exaggeration, but as description. The name captured the grim reality of living on land that could not hold its ground. And still the erosion continued. By the early 21st century, North Cove had lost hundreds of acres. Properties once mapped on land sat offshore. Old photographs revealed neighbourhoods that no longer existed. The Pacific had redrawn the coastline with astonishing efficiency. Yet the deeper significance of North Cove extends beyond one small town. Its disappearance reveals the fragility of sedimentary coastlines in the face of disrupted natural systems. Beaches are not static landscapes. They are temporary accumulations of sediment maintained only by balance. Remove the supply, intensify the energy, and the shoreline begins to fail. North Cove is where that failure became visible. The forces at work there are not isolated. Similar processes threaten deltas, barrier islands, and estuarine coasts around the world. Wherever sediment is reduced and wave energy dominates, erosion accelerates. At Washaway Beach, those processes reached an extreme, creating one of the clearest examples of rapid shoreline retreat in North America. The scale of retreat was staggering. Decade after decade, the shoreline moved inland by hundreds of feet, stripping away entire parcels of land and permanently altering the shape of the coast. Historic property boundaries became meaningless as the ocean crossed roads, consumed lots, and erased landmarks. In some places, the water advanced more than 1,000 feet, or over 300 meters, inland compared with earlier shorelines. The rate of land loss far exceeded what most communities could adapt to through ordinary coastal planning. As erosion accelerated, North Cove's geography changed in ways that made the town even more vulnerable. Every stretch of beach lost to the sea reduced the natural buffer that once absorbed incoming wave energy. Without that protective sand, waves attacked the shore with increasing force. Storm surges pushed farther inland. Flooding became more severe. Areas that had once been shielded by dunes were suddenly exposed to direct wave attack. This created a dangerous feedback loop. As the coast retreated, the remaining shoreline became weaker, allowing storms to cause greater damage, which in turn accelerated retreat even further. The erosion was no longer a linear process. It was compounding. Faced with relentless erosion, efforts were made to halt or at least slow the retreat. The earliest responses relied on traditional shoreline defense methods, hard structures designed to resist wave energy. Rock revetments were placed along vulnerable sections of the coast, with large boulders arranged to armour the shoreline against incoming surf. These barriers were intended to absorb wave force and protect the land behind them from direct erosion. In theory, such structures can stabilise shorelines. In practice at Washaway Beach, they faced immense challenges. The same wave energy that eroded the natural coast also attacked the engineered defences. During powerful winter storms, waves overtopped or displaced the rocks. In some cases, the revetments protected one section of shoreline but worsened erosion nearby by altering how waves reflected and currents moved sediment. The ocean simply redirected its force to adjacent unprotected areas. This revealed one of the fundamental difficulties in coastal engineering. Fixing one section of shoreline can destabilize another. Beaches are connected systems. Interrupting natural erosion in one location often changes sediment transport patterns elsewhere. At North Cove, where the entire coastal system was already out of balance, local hardening efforts could not solve the broader geological problem. More reinforcement projects followed, but each encountered the same reality. The ocean's energy at North Cove was too intense, and the sediment deficit too severe for simple shoreline armouring to provide a lasting solution. The revetments bought time, but not stability. Another challenge was the depth of the erosion problem itself. The shoreline was not merely losing surface sand. Wave action was reshaping the offshore seabed, steepening the nearshore profile and allowing waves to break closer to land with greater force. Even if a rock barrier protected the immediate shoreline, the deeper coastal geometry remained unstable. The sea was changing the entire physical framework of the coast. This meant that engineering defences had to do more than shield the land. They had to influence the behaviour of waves and sediment across a broader area. That required larger and more complex interventions, often at much greater cost. Over time, planners recognised that North Cove's survival depended not only on defending the shoreline, but on rebuilding the beach itself. Beaches act as natural energy absorbers, dissipating wave power before it reaches inland areas. Without sufficient beach width, no landward structure can fully protect the coast. The challenge was how to restore that width in a location where waves constantly stripped sand away. This led to large-scale efforts involving engineered structures designed to trap and retain sediment. Offshore and nearshore installations were introduced to slow sediment loss and encourage sand accumulation. By altering local wave patterns, these projects aimed to rebuild the protective beach that had largely vanished. The strategy represented a shift in thinking. Rather than fighting the ocean directly, engineers sought to reshape the coastal system in ways that reduced erosion naturally. If wave energy could be dispersed and sand retained, the beach might once again provide a defensive buffer. The results were significant, though not immediate. In areas where sediment began to accumulate, the shoreline stabilized and in some places even advanced seaward. Wider beaches reduced the direct impact of storm waves on inland areas. Infrastructure once considered highly vulnerable gained a measure of protection. The most severe annual erosion rates declined. This was a major achievement, but it did not mean the problem was solved. Coastal stabilization in such environments is not a permanent victory. The forces that created the erosion crisis remain active: strong Pacific storms, concentrated tidal currents, sediment limitations, and rising sea levels. Engineering can alter how these forces interact, but it cannot eliminate them. Sea level rise introduces an especially serious long-term challenge. Even modest increases in average sea level allow waves to reach farther inland, increasing erosion potential. A shoreline that appears stable today may resume retreat as water levels rise over coming decades. At North Cove, where the land is low and erosion dynamics are already severe, this threat is particularly acute. Higher sea levels also magnify storm surge impacts. Storms that once caused moderate flooding may generate destructive erosion under elevated water conditions. Every inch of sea level rise effectively gives storm waves a higher starting point from which to attack the coast. This means that the measures protecting North Cove today must contend not only with present conditions, but with intensifying future pressures. Maintaining shoreline stability may require repeated nourishment, reinforcement and redesign as the environment changes. What makes North Cove remarkable is the speed at which those forces transform the landscape. In little more than a century, the Pacific Ocean erased vast stretches of inhabited land. Places that once supported homes and roads became open water. A shoreline that people treated as permanent proved to be one of the most mobile in the nation. North Cove remains a place where the land and ocean are in continual negotiation. The shoreline may hold for now, but only because enormous effort has been invested in resisting the forces that seek to move it. Beneath every engineered barrier lies the same unstable geology, the same sediment-starved coast, and the same Pacific energy that drove the erosion in the first place. That is what makes Washaway Beach so compelling. It is not simply a story of land being lost. It is a vivid example of how landscapes that seem permanent can change rapidly when geological balance is broken. It shows how coasts depend on invisible systems of sediment transport, wave dynamics and tidal energy. And it reveals how difficult it is to restore stability once those systems are disrupted. North Cove earned the name Washaway Beach because the ocean was washing it away, one storm at a time, 1 year at a time, at rates as high as 100 feet, over 30 meters, every year. That relentless retreat transformed the town into a warning written directly onto the shoreline. Even land can disappear when the forces shaping it are stronger than the systems protecting it. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, share and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of the powerful geological forces reshaping communities around the world. And tap that hype icon to help this video reach a wider audience so more people can understand the real changes happening along our coasts before the next shoreline disappears.